Hey folks, and welcome to another video from A Plain Truth. Today I want to get into wet surface air coolers and the largest water vapor machines that make weather in North America. I and a dear friend were on a drive. We went out to Geyeserville. We went out a 13-mile double-lane road. Hardly saw anybody to a non-public Calpine geothermal plant. Turns out it's in the middle of the mountains with these wet surface air coolers sitting on top of these mountains with steam pipes coming up from the ground up to the wet surface air cooler. There's 15 of them, of these stacks and stacks of wet surface air coolers to take weather and create weather water vapor machines so weather can be created, because we've destroyed the ability to make weather with our coal ash that's been in the sky for over 100 years, destroying the ability to make rain with cloud condensation nuclei, as we'll get into in a minute. But this is about 10, 15 miles north of Santa Rosa in Northern California. And I don't know anybody that's been reported on the geothermal activities with these wet surface air coolers clearly sitting on top of all these mountains. It was an unbelievable sight to see these wet surface air coolers located right where I live, and I never even knew these existed. I never heard anybody talking about them. They say it's being used for electricity. And you can see here the geothermal plants in California. But what I want to get into first is how rain is made, so we understand why cloud condensation nuclei, sprayed barium, and water vapor machines are necessary to make rain. So to be very clear, the hydrological cycle of ocean water makes the rain. Rain comes from the ocean's activities, or used to come from the ocean activities. Air currents enter water vapors into the atmosphere, and then the water vapors condense into small particles that are known as cloud condensation nuclei, or CCN. This particulate matter are less than a micron in diameter. They're extremely small. The condensation takes place just like water vapors condense on a saucepan's lid when water is boiled in it. In that same way, water vapors condense when they collide with the cloud condensation nuclei. Now, warm air can hold more water than cool air. But if the air, warm or cool, is holding half as much moisture as it can hold when saturated, the relative humidity is 50%. This is the temperature below which the air can no longer hold the moisture in vapor form, and liquid water or dew will form and rain is created.
The hot water in the kettle gives off water vapor to the air by rapid evaporation, just as rivers, lakes, and ponds give off water vapor to the air by slow evaporation. As the hot water-filled air hits the colder air near the ice tray, the water vapor turns into clouds of tiny water droplets floating in the air, condensation. When the air is quite cold and cannot hold any more water droplets, they collect together to form larger drops, as on the ice tray. And being too heavy to float in the air, they fall back to the earth as rain.
There's a phenomenal resource here, the geysers that straddles Lake County and Sonoma County line. This is the largest geothermal facility in the world. We've been operating up here for over 50 years.
Fear, opportunity. Throughout history, Northern California's geothermal resources have intrigued, fascinated, and mesmerized explorers, settlers, tourists, and engineers alike. This wonder of nature is nestled among the oaks and rocky outcroppings of the Mayacamas Mountains and is known as the geysers. Finally, in 1960, the first commercial geothermal electric unit in the Western Hemisphere began operation. Calpine had a much more positive vision for this eco-friendly resource. They would consolidate ownership of power plants that lay scattered across more than 45 square miles of mountains and create a coordinated management plan for the steam fields to maximize production of this clean, reliable, renewable energy. Calpine gained a foothold in the geysers when it purchased a 1 megawatt interest in the Adlin plant in 1989. Over the next decade, the company acquired most of the other operating plants in the field.
So the process of making rain is very simple, as Weather War 101 shows us. You take a steam pot and you heat it up, and you'll get condensation under the tin of steam that's going up, and you'll create water. It's the same principle they're using here. They use the wet surface air coolers or vaporish machines to create the steam. The steam goes up and interacts with the barium and the cloud condensation nuclei, and then it's steered with the NexRad radar systems. We see it time over and over again, but it's basically steam. This is how minerals are taken out for, like photovoltaic. When your cells in your batteries, you want it distilled water. They take the heavy metals out. Same type of process. They heat up steam, and the dripped water doesn't have the heavy metal in it. But Calpine's running the show now. They bought it from PG&E. You see they're advertising their wet surface air coolers as electrical generators, when in fact they're being used as well for weather modification, and a world North America premier weather provider. And as you can see from this chart, the wet surface air coolers are everywhere. William Cohen, former CIA, says weather warfare is the next big deal. And as you can see from these pictures, over and over again, all around the world, there are wet surface air coolers generating steam, sending them up into the skies to create enough precipitation and water vapor so that they can be combined to steer the weather all over where they need it, because we've destroyed our abilities to make weather. There is no natural weather anymore. It is all modified. So we need to take that into account as we're watching all this. And then the next thing we need to get into is how weather is steered. But before that, I want to get into how these cooling towers actually work and what the process is for them to use to create enough of water vapors to be able to transfer the weather from one area to another. So let's get into that.
Here's how it works. In order to create a rainstorm, then, for instance, all we need to do is start the cloud system with a water vapor, released from a power plant A, wait until that initial cloud of water vapor reaches station B, then continuing the feeding clouding system with water vapor releases from station B. Wait until that more developed cloud system reaches station C, then continue feeding the cloud system with water vapor releases, and so on until the system reaches saturation and drops the accumulated water vapor as rain. From a climatological observations and cloud physics research, it is known that cumulus clouds and rain showers of thunderstorms can be triggered by relatively small inputs of energy. This is critical to understand. And a Shangon 1968 about has shown that areas downwind of Chicago had experienced 20 to 40% increases in precipitation due to urban industrial effects. Measurements of cooling tower plume profiles indicate that humidity increases can be detected for many miles downwind. It is quite evident that any severe weather event resulting from cooling tower effluence could be attained only through a triggering or stimulation effect. That is, the additional heat and or moisture fed into the developing storm cloud could conceivably produce an imbalance that could result in its intensification into a severe weather state. Okay.
So now once they create this, the weather state they want, they use the Doppler, NexRad, next generation radar systems to steer the weather using radio frequencies. And here you can see from this image in the top exactly what they're doing. But focus on the image down in the lower corner here, and this is California, and you can see the selected area we're going to focus on here in a minute. But here you can see a rotation as they're steering the weather, the yellow being the water vapor machines creating the weather, and then the blue, light blue, aqua blue is the steering mechanisms for how they steer the weather in the directions they wish to make it go, whether they want to create tornadoes, hurricanes, whatever, droughts, or severe rain. Now I want to get into Beale Air Force Base, which is due east of Geyeserville. This is a radio frequency being enacted, and I want you to study this. You see California coast. You see where the geysers are. You see where all the yellow is being created. That's where the geysers are at Calpine, and you can see them making the water vapors right there. And then you see the radio frequencies at Beale Air Force Base being enacted. You see the blue. See the blue? It's minimal. You watch the yellow being increased right as it gets over the area, the exact area where Geyeserville, Calpine wet surface air coolers plants, and then you see the radio frequencies steering the weather. That's Lake Tahoe on the right, that little circle there at the crux on the right-hand side, so you get a perspective. Sacramento's right below. But that's Beale Air Force Base. That's where they have the radar stations, the reconnaissance. They've had radar there for a very long time. In fact, Beale has a real history. But here we can see the actual radar water vapors being created and being steered. It can't get any clearer than this. So a quick sidebar here while I was doing a little research on Beale Air Force Base. It was originally a founded chemical warfare school at Beale, began in 1944. Recommendation moved the school from the Rocky Mountain Arsenals. It was Western Chemical Warfare School, and then after that, listen to this, German prisoner of war base camp opened in Beale in May 1944. Branch camps were established in Northern California: Arbuckle, Colusa, Chico, Butte County, Davis, Yolo County, 250 Germans, Napa County, 250 Germans, Windsor, 250 Germans. All the camps provided agricultural manpower to local farms and ranches and the wineries. German POWs at Beale also provided manpower for base support operations until they were closed in 46. How many knew that we used prisoners, German prisoners of war housed in California to grow food and build out the wineries? Not many. So this is at Beale Air Force Base. Now further, Beale was later turned into, Camp Beale became Beale Air Force Base. Its mission to train bomber navigators in radar techniques. So they've been using radars, and they have this pause radar system, another one. So we have plenty of evidence that Beale Air Force Base has the guided radar systems in order to steer.
All right, so not only are they making these water vapor machines to have to create the weather so we have rainfall and they could create drought, they can create rain, they can do whatever they want. But at the geysers here is the single largest geothermal operation in the world, producing up to 725 megawatts in energy, enough to power the entire city of San Francisco, yet it doesn't. Due to a sharp decline in natural steam conditions, the plant was decommissioned and steam wells were plugged and abandoned in 1990. Now here's where it gets really sick. Over the past 10 years, Calpine has been injecting up to 20 million gallons of reclaimed wastewater, aka our shit, per day from Santa Rosa and Lake County into the underground steam reservoirs to produce additional steam and manage the entire field as a whole. The injection process is what makes it possible to revisit abandoned well sites and bring them back online. And here we see today that they have 330 steam wells, 75 injection sites, and 41% of overall geothermal operations in the United States. Yes, they're using our own shit to create rain to spray on us. Isn't that wonderful, folks? Talk about renewable energy, huh? We've been looking since 1985 for a solution to discharge our waste from the Russian River. Oh, said it was the point where the Russian River was becoming tapped out as a viable destination, for the city's treated wastewater. Their geothermal power operation was running short on Mother Nature's naturally heated water supply, which boils from beneath the surface of the Mayacamas Mountains, known by most as the geysers. There's only so much natural water that exists, so we have to get it from other sources. No shit. We had a resource that we had too much of. Shit. And Calpine had a resource it needed. Shit. Our shit. To transfer that resource to Calpine, the city of Santa Rosa installed 40 miles of pipes to run from the plant up to the nearby mountain to generate to the network of 15 geothermal power plants, or wet surface air coolers. Treated the wastewater is converted to water vapor, goes up in the air, and comes back down on us as shit. Our shit. Last year we used every drop of shit. We did not discharge any water into the Russian River. Oh, good. With the geysers, we can use the shit 24 hours a day continuously. So it's perfect shit. Santa Rosa needs to get rid of continuously. We need to use it continuously. Problem, reaction, solution, folks. Unreal. Watch this.
Thermal operators at the geysers collaborated with community leaders in Lake and Sonoma counties on a master plan that involved a number of the area's sticky problems. At a time when operators were looking for ways to reverse declines in steam production at the geysers, Local communities were looking for an alternative disposal method for urban wastewater. Because releasing this water into area streams and lakes was known to be detrimental to fragile and endangered aquatic life, new ideas were needed. With the support of local, state, and federal leaders, a win-win plan emerged. Instead of releasing the water into area waterways like the Russian River, the wastewater could be treated and piped to the geyser steam fields, where injection wells pump it deep into the hot rocks to replenish the steam reservoirs. The world's first wastewater to power project, the Southeast Geysers Effluent Pipeline, was born in 1997. A second pipeline, the Santa Rosa Recharge Geysers Pipeline, was completed in 2003, creating the world's largest wastewater to power project.
The wide range of fluid streams cooled by the WSACs in the wastewater industry include various liquids prior to biological treatment. Most plants are required to treat their wastewater before discharge back to sewers or municipalities. The WSAC is a preferred technology for wastewater cooling due to the ability to maintain the critical outlet temperature required for biological treatment tanks, commonly referred to as bug ponds. The low risk of fouling due to tube side velocity design and mechanical cleanability make the WSAC ideal for wastewater applications. Makeup for the WSAC can come from almost any source.
This bold vision for a community-business collaboration is a win-win solution. Good for the environment, good for the people of California, and a model of innovation around the world. The geysers play a key role in California's green initiatives for renewable power generation and creating green jobs, and possibly add new plants to increase generation. The future is indeed bright.
So just to drive home a point, you'll find very, very few geoengineering or chemtrail sites that talk about weather modification incorporated. You can see program services, meteorological services, atmospheric assessments, cloud seeding, weather radar systems. That's the Doppler NEXRAD we'll get into at another time. Here's the aircraft everywhere. But they have atmospheric assessments in the clouds, the transformation of invisible atmospheric water vapor to visible droplets governed by nucleation, the character of local aerosols and cloud condensation nuclei. Okay? So you're not hearing that being talked about on all these sites, and folks. And here's another bunch of companies that are sponsored by our state governments for wet surface air coolers, weather modification, Wisconsin. These are all sites that provide wet surface air cooling and other services for geoengineering that are not being covered by nearly all chemtrail and geoengineering sites, and all these people like Freeland and Kirby and these others that are putting out geoengineering books, okay?